Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. To begin with, if I can ask everyone to stand as you're able for the singing of our national anthem. We are going to be the choir. It'll be playing and be on the screen behind me, so please join in. Thank you very much. It's been moved by Councillor John Gazzola that the minutes of the regular meeting held August 24th and the special meetings held August 24th and 31st as mailed to the mayor and councillors be accepted. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, we'll move on to item number 4. There are two pieces of communications referred to file. Pertaining to flag requests. And with that, we'll now move on to item number 5. And it certainly is Council's pleasure this evening to welcome into the Council chamber a number of our local athletes and lead volunteers that participated from the City of Kitchener in the Pan Am and the Para-Pan Am Games in Toronto and surrounding area this past summer. We wanted, as a council, to take this opportunity to acknowledge our local athletes and lead volunteers for their contributions to the sports that they participated in, as well as to the overall games. And so we had a little bit of a reception prior to the council meeting downstairs, and now we'll have an opportunity to recognize and acknowledge each of them with a certificate. So with that, I will move to the other podium. So we have a number of athletes or their family members that were able to join us this evening for the event, as well as a few that weren't. And so I'll begin with those who are here in attendance in alphabetical order. First of all, Mandy Bujold, who won the gold in boxing flyweight division at the Pan Am Games. Next, we have Rick Cadilla, who was a member of the OPP Lead Integrated Security Unit at the Pan Am and Para-Pan Am Games, helping make sure the game stayed safe. Next, we have Raquel Cadilla, who was an intelligence analyst and a member of the Joint Intelligence Group for the Pan Am and Para-Pan Am Games. Next up, we have Alec Elliott, who won 5 bronze medals at the Para-Pan Am Games in swimming, 100-meter backstroke, 100-meter breaststroke, 100-meter butterfly, 400-meter freestyle, and 200-meter individual medley. It tires me out just thinking about all those. Next up is Janice Moore, who was the sport organizing committee chair for diving at the Pan Am Games. Next up, we have Jamal Murray, who won the silver medal in men's basketball at the Pan Am Games. Accepting on his behalf is his father, Roger Murray. Next up, we have Leah Robinson, who won the silver medal in the 400-meter dash T38 and a bronze medal in the 200-meter dash T37 at the Para-Pan Am Games. And last up this evening is Greg Syke, represented Team Canada in the 50-meter rifle competition at the Pan Am Games. Now, as I indicated, there were a number of athletes who weren't able to join, and lead volunteers who weren't able to join us this evening, and we will be forwarding their certificates on to them, but I would like to acknowledge them today nonetheless. Kelly Hinnels, who was the sport organizing committee chair for gymnastics at the Para-Pan Am Games. Ricky Gomez, who's a member of the men's U22 Canada soccer team, who ranked 7th. Dan McClelland, who represented Canada in men's singles in bowling, where he won a bronze medal, and represented Canada in men's doubles in bowling, where he won gold. Tyler Miller, who won silver as a member of Team Canada's wheelchair basketball team at the Para-Pan Am Games. Rebecca Paven is a member of Team Canada's women's volleyball team at the Pan Am Games. Brianne Stairs, who won a bronze medal at the Pan Am Games in field hockey. Mike Thompson, head coach for Para-Pan Am Games Team Canada swim team. Amanda Woodcroft, who won a bronze medal at the Pan Am Games in field hockey, and John McCalla, who was the sport organizing committee chair for fencing at the Pan Am Games as well. So let's give all of them a round of applause as well. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge and thank 3 groups or individuals. First, the individuals. I'd like to thank Mike Farwell, who's up at the back, for emceeing rather our event downstairs today prior to the council meeting, as well as Ashley Purvis. Where'd Ashley go? There you are. From our athletics department here at the city for helping put this evening's event together. And finally, a round of applause for all of the parents and supporters for each of our athletes and lead volunteers, because without them and their families, much of what they've achieved, no doubt, wouldn't be possible. So let's give all of them a round of applause. Thank you very much, everyone. So once again, on behalf of our community, thank you to all of you. We'll now be proceeding with the rest of our council meeting. Those of you who are interested in local politics, feel free to stick around and join us. But if you think you'd rather probably move on and enjoy your evening and celebrate with your families, feel free to do that as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming this evening. We'll now move to delegations, and our first delegation is Mr. Greg Moore in support of Committee of Adjustment submission FN 2015-002 223 Claremont Avenue. And if I can ask if we can just lower the podium, please.
Thank you.
Welcome, Greg, and I'd like to just remind you and all of our delegations that you have 5 minutes this evening to make your presentations. Thank you.
All right. I don't really have a presentation to make. I just wanted to be here to offer my time so that you could ask me questions if you had questions about my fence variance.
Okay. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you. This particular property is in my ward. I did drive by over the weekend to take a look at it and read the Committee of Adjustment application. I have no concern about it. I'm prepared just to move this item.
Okay, so you'd like to move it. There don't appear to be any other questions, Greg, so thank you for coming in. And Councillor Yanetsky has moved that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Galloway-Seelock, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for making the effort to come in this evening. We will now move on to, we have two items that actually, two delegations that need to be added to the agenda, and so will require a motion of 2/3 of council to add them. One is Moira McGee, and the other one is, Ms. McGee's back for an item that we've dealt with previously, and then the second one is Francis Brecco, who is here to speak on property taxes. Somebody care to move those two items? Moved by Councillor Fernandez. Seconded by Councillor Kelly Galloway-Seelock. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So we'll now move on to Ms. McGee. Good evening, Ms. McGee. Welcome.
Hi, how are you? Okay, lots of bags. Black bags are trauma, but that's okay. All right. Just give me 1 second here to put this in the right order. So I can
No
keep
problem.
it straight somehow in my mind. It's all very overwhelming, especially when you're as sick as I am. I tried to get out of it, Your Honor, Your Worship. Okay. So my name is Moira McGee. Many of you know me. In fact, I would say all of you know me. Last year in the summer, I applied for REAP assistance, which is the Waterloo Regional Energy Assistance Program, for the benefit of LEAP, which is a low-income energy assistance program, which is birthed out of the Ontario Energy Board back in 2008, when they realized that they would have to look at some people who might be paying taxes, who found themselves in hard times and paying utilities and things of that nature. So basically I applied for it, and then I started a process. And I advised Kitchener Utilities that they needed to stop withdrawing my utilities out of my Kitchener gas, out of my account, because living on ODSP, I couldn't afford it. I needed to put my money to food and therapy. So then what happened was, the City of Kitchener has a policy. It's policy 5117. It's coexisting policy amended in June, along with policy 518. And essentially that says that if you are a homeowner in the City of Kitchener and you have Kitchener Utilities, that Kitchener Utilities will take your arrears of your utilities and transfer them over to your tax account. And there they will sit on your tax account for up to 2 years before any kind of litigation is commenced against you, any kind of power lien procedures, at a rate of interest of 1.25%. For a landlord, they don't do that. I think this is complete discrimination to me as a homeowner in our region on Ontario Disability, that I have been denied my full funding, which has been granted to me by the region of Waterloo, for assistance with my utilities. I honestly find it unbelievable that I have been forced to come here tonight and share my personal story. And I have made a decision to send it all to you in an email over the next day or two if I have the strength. I also want to mention to you that I have requested a tax deferral and I qualify for that on ODSP. I have all of my documentation here and nobody has assisted me with that either. I would also like to say that on the 23rd of this month, I will find myself in the Superior Courts of Justice where I am defending myself because I might kill a family in this region because I suffer myself with suicidal thoughts, and the City of Kitchener has decided not to enforce their bylaw to keep me safe and stop the constant triggering that is going on in my residence. That is making it impossible for me to remain there anymore in your ward, Councillor Fernandez. Basically, I have no problem relating to this article. No problem whatsoever. I will write a memoir of the last year or so of my life in this region when I began to run for regional chair. Shortly after I came on ODSP, about the efforts and the lengths that I went to have a voice and to be respected and to have more effect and change on policy in our region, but I'm out of strength. So please expect something from me. I understand from reading the policy that the city treasurer has the right to exercise discretion, and I would ask you, sir, when you receive my package, to please exercise discretion. We cannot take one class of homeowner, a homeowner that occupies their unit, to a homeowner that doesn't, and deny that person assistance that on our website you clearly show as being something available to me. Can somebody just take my stuff right now and get it to the chair outside in the hallway, please? Can somebody help me? Yes. Feel free to join me at the Superior Courts on the 23rd, where we see what, as a council, your actions are submitting us to. No, I got it. Once I start to get my leg going, I just have to keep going. It'll be okay. No.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I would just move that we affirm our existing utilities policy.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Fernandez, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Our next delegation is Francis Brecko. Ms. Brecko, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Francis Brecko, and I'm here. I'm concerned about increased property tax. Every year, I have higher property tax. I don't think you have a good finance department because it's easiest way. They do the easiest way. Just put higher number on my tax bill. There is other. I can say wasting our money. I go on a King Street, couple of times I see 4 sweepers. We don't need 4 sweepers on a King Street. Where are they? We have 4 machine sweepers. Where are they? I never see them use them. Now, it's wasting our money. And behind 4 sweepers, about 30 meters after, he was another sweeper. And I questioned him, who hired you? The city committee. I would like to know who is city committee. And why Councillor Fernandez and Councillor Gazzola and Councillor Janetsky speak up for taxpayers, what I follow. What happened to other councillors? And I contact you, Barry Varbanovich, 3 times in your office. The woman said you're going to return call. You never call back. You forget that you were elected by people and you are serving the people, and you don't serve me. That's the way, and this 5 minutes talk, it's not democracy for me. And I hope you, Mr. Gazzola has a lot of good idea. He knows finance. And nobody, if he speak up, nobody take notice of it. I don't know why. I would like to know why. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brecko. Are there any questions? Not. Thank you for coming in this evening. Our next delegation is Mr. John Edmund with respect to West Heights, item 8A under unfinished business. Welcome, Mr. Edmund.
Thank you, Mayor and City Councils. I'm just here to follow up based on the previous meeting that we have the West Heights Drive residents, where we were looking for some amendments. We did receive a letter from Jeff Kalnick changing some of the amendments that were requested by the previous speaker on this activity. From that point, we reviewed the amendments that were located on the website. From there, we noticed that there were some amendments that were made that were not satisfactory to the rest of the West Heights residents, and we had requested that those changes be made. We received a letter from Mr. Kalnick indicating that he would be presenting here to Council a further amendment based on a letter that we since presented back here through to you, Mr. Mayor, and the City Councilors. So I want to make sure that that change that was confirmed in the letter that we received on the Friday, that will be in fact going ahead. And we also want to make sure that the same similar change is made at the Blackwell Drive intersection. And we're looking for confirmation that those amendment changes are going to be made.
Okay, that's the end of your presentation?
It can be,
Okay.
unless
there's questions.
I just want to get a confirmation
Yeah.
that amendment has been made to the mayor and the city councilors.
Mr. Riedman, if you can come down and respond to the delegation, please. Mr. Riedman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that there's a revised drawing for the western leg of the Driftwood Drive. I would just request clarification from the delegation, if I could, on which intersection of Blackwell he's referring to. Is that the one on the eastern side of West Heights or the western side?
It would be on the western side.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that one is shown in the plan as being removed.
Okay. Does that address your concern, sir?
So it does.
Okay.
So both of those are made. The only other activity that I would like to continue to pursue is we are also looking for some amendment or change with respect to the speed limit. We would like to see further activity to try to reduce the speed limits from current of 50 kilometer an hour to 40. And we'd also like to request some additional police presence to try to curb some of the speeders and on West Heights as part of the calming portion of that activity. So I'm not sure exactly how that needs to be addressed, but we would like somebody to try to, continue with that request, if possible.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Edmonds, for coming in. Just relating to your last request, would it be maybe prudent for us, before we start talking about reducing the speed limit on West Heights, to see what happens once all of the traffic calming and the lane painting is done, to see if that does the traffic calming first?
That's fine. And who is going to monitor that? What would be the process?
We always do before and after traffic calming studies. We take the numbers and we review those, and I would expect that Mr. Reedman would be doing exactly the same thing on West Heights.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Mr. Reedman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We always do a follow-up study approximately a year after.
Okay.
Okay.
Councillor Yanetsky?
Yes, thank you for coming in. You indicated that you're satisfied with the discussions and the compromise with city staff that's taken place, right?
That is correct.
What was your original position on this? Were you in favor of this sort of happening before the compromise happening, or were you totally against it? I'm not sure where you're coming from initially.
Okay, well, the whole idea in terms of the West Heights Drive was originally to be a traffic calming process. In addition to that, the cycling plan was put in place. Of that, many changes had been made that weren't satisfactory to the entire West Heights residents. So I'm just continuing that process to make sure that as a resident of West Heights Drive and the balance of the residents that we have in West Heights Drive, that we are all working towards the end goal, and that is to have reduced speed. And sometimes in order to do that, you have to make some changes. So based on the existing plan, we're being told that that should help to reduce the overall speeding. We're still not 100% convinced that that will happen. And we are looking for some further alterations if needed by either a speed limit reduction or an increase in police presence on the street.
Okay, and that's something that could be addressed, as was just pointed out. Are you representing just yourself or a number of residents, or there was a petition submitted back last time?
This is prior, where there was a petition submitted, and that discussion had been presented the last council meeting. And so we're just continuing to make sure that our interests are being looked after.
So all those people on that petition are happy now with the compromise? Is that what you're telling me?
Provided that the amendments that Mr. Kolnick has just presented and that they are firmly put in place, then I would believe that the majority of the residents should be happy with those changes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis?
Thanks, Mr. Edmonds, for coming in. I just want to follow up with your question about the 40 kilometers with staff, and wondering if that's West Heights is going to be involved with part of the school safety zone.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the school does have 40 kilometers an hour signs located in front of it. So typically that zone just covers the area in front of the school, not the entire street.
Okay, my one concern is about St. Mark's, because St. Mark's is kind of like on the corner of West Heights and Autumn Hill. I wonder if we can look at that as well through there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can look into that and get back to council.
I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay. That would appear to be the end of the question. So thank you very much for coming in, Mr. Edmonds, and everyone else who I know has been following this issue for some time. Thank you for coming in this evening. Councillor Ioannidis, you're moving the recommendation. I do note there is a new set of drawings that have been circulated. Mr. Reedman, do you want to just comment on that, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this set of drawings shows the removal of the left turn lane at the western intersection of Driftwood Drive and West Heights, which the delegate spoke to earlier today. So we'd ask that council approve the drawing with the revised removal of the left turn lane.
Okay. And those were circulated on Thursday to council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they were circulated to all property owners this past Thursday, and then sent to yourself and Councillor Ioannidis, and then brought as a hard copy today.
Okay, they should. We should actually put them up on the screen then, so that. Oh, there. Okay, sorry. Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, I don't have much further to say. I'm glad that we could come to a resolution that is satisfactory to the neighborhood, and I'm glad to move forward with this.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I have a question of staff.
Yeah, please go ahead.
In the report that we received on the weekend, it stated that the cost now for this project is $90,000. I wonder if staff could just indicate what budgets that amount is coming out of.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, approximately $40,000 will be coming from the traffic calming budget when the concrete island is installed, and then the remainder would be coming from the cycling master plan capital account.
Thank you. The other thing I was wondering, for that $90,000, is that purely for painting, or is there any construction work being done?
Through the mayor, there's a narrowing proposed at the bottom section of West Heights that remains in the plan, so that construction is planned to happen, which will likely be next year. The rest is painting, labor, and signage for the installation.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, question to staff, Mr. Reedman again. Of that money that was just addressed, I did a drive-by earlier today, and I've noticed that some islands that were put there have now been removed. Is that part of the $90,000 that the cost has been incurred?
Through the mayor, that is part of it as well. There was a request to remove those islands because they create an issue around winter maintenance, so those were removed to facilitate the future installation.
Right, okay. And if that money, would there any of that money be allocated in terms of fixing the trail link and behind along West Heights there along the Greenway, or is that a separate item?
Through the mayor, that would come from the operations budget through trails. So we've passed on that comment to operations staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the motion has been moved. I don't believe it's been seconded. Seconded by Councillor Galloway-Sealock. Any further discussion? Oh, Councillor Gazzola. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to have an opportunity to make a comment about it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I did not support this the first time it came to council, which was back on August the 24th, I think. I wanted to get more information, and I've had an opportunity to get a lot more information. However, I'm not prepared to support this tonight. I'm pleased to see that the neighborhood has really compromised considerably, and have been prepared to give up on a number of things and to live with what's before them. But I was concerned throughout this, the process involved with this whole issue, as to me, there are some broken pieces that need to be looked at, and I'm still not convinced that we're getting the best value for our taxpayer dollars. I really would have preferred to have seen that more of that money going up and going to fixing the trail that runs parallel to the street that is in need of repairs. It's an issue that I'm sure we're going to be running into many more times down the road in the next few years, in that there is a real push on for the cycling, painting of streets and whatnot, and now there's a real clash, it appears, when it comes to traffic calming issues, and we're trying to combine everything at the same time. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered, and for that reason, although I'm pleased to see things moving forward, I will not be supporting the vote tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you. I also had concerns with this application back when it first appeared, and I didn't support it at committee either. I've had a number of residents who did contact me, and I've had discussions with them. I've gone through the West Heights twice just to take a look. Never saw a bicyclist yet. And the way West Heights functions right now, I'm pleased with it. I've talked to some people and they're happy with it, and I can see where we're coming through in terms of the objective of the bicycling committee, etc. But that's just the bicycling committee as opposed to just the local residents utilizing their bikes. So, and then the process itself was an issue that was raised by the residents initially, but staff have come back and tried to address it as best as they can, and I appreciate that as well. But anyways, I'm still of the opinion that the application not the application, but the objective of putting this forward is, I'm thinking, in my opinion, going in the wrong direction in terms of there's enough room on the 4 lanes for bicyclists, and you can still use the trail link in behind.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. There's been a lot of compromise from both the community and from our staff. But I think one of the things that I heard, and I haven't hidden the fact that I'm an avid cyclist and I support the Cycling Master Plan, but just like when trails go into existing neighbourhoods and residents find that as a bit of a shock and a bit of a surprise, I think this is what was happening on West Heights as well. So maybe where we're falling down is how we present to the community an idea. And it needs to be presented in an open and relaxed manner with the fact that it's a conceptual idea, so that we take the input from the community and compile that with the knowledge from our staff, and that everybody feels that they're being listened to. I think it's much harder for you to come back to start the process, as many of you did, going door to door and knocking on people's doors and being angry and frustrated. If we start the process in a manner, and I'm not saying that our staff is not disrespectful, but I got the feeling from many of the residents the first time you were here that you were very angry about the way the process was presented to you. And so maybe that's where we need to revisit how we engage the public, because it's very, very important to us how we engage you and how we present ideas to you, so that we do come out with, and we have come up with, I think, a fairly good solution and a fairly good compromise. And I think that's the process that we have to really take a look at, so that we aren't sitting with residents being angry and frustrated, but they do feel that they have been heard right from the very, very beginning.
Councillor Galloway-Silock.
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to say that I appreciate the work and the attendance that the residents have had throughout this process, and that you've stuck with it and coming forward with an outcome that works for you and also for the city as well, and appreciate staff going through that process. I don't disagree that there may need to be some refinements to our process in the way that we present it to the community. But what I'm struggling with here is the fact that we have, as members of council sitting around here, minus Councillor Marsh and Councillor Schneider, who are new, we all sat here and we supported our cycling master plan in the last term of council. And we also supported our trails, our Pathways and Trails master plan that supports the upgrades of trails and the maintenance of trails. And so that's being taken care of just in a separate section. And so while their concern has been brought forward and it will go to the operations and to the correct department, it's not being dealt with here today. And we've also had a cycling master plan that's come forward that identified this street as a main link to continue to move forward. So the fact that I'm hearing that some people aren't going to support this is actually mind-blowing to me, because I think we've sat here and we've done the cycling master plan and the trails master plan, which will identify all of the projects and help support everything that the residents have brought through. And I find it hard to believe that we can't sit here and unanimously support a document that has gone through a very public process where the residents are in favor, staff are in favor, and the majority of council are in favor. And I think that we need to continue to make sure we piece all these things together when it comes to our master plans. And if we aren't supportive of moving forward with that at the time, then we need to speak up at that point in time.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vandenbeck. Yeah, I think there is some bumps on the road through this with regards to some of dealing with the public and on how we're moving forward with, and I think a lot of it had to do with miscommunication. But I think the steps that we as staff took, and I think as council we took, was I think we got to a resolution that I think was satisfactory to everything. It wasn't pretty, but sometimes when you have differences of opinions, it doesn't become pretty. So we did come to a satisfactory solution for everyone. So what I see here was true democracy at its finest. So I just think one other thing too that I wanted to mention, because it keeps being mentioned by other members on council about this trail, that they were more concerned about that this has been being dealt with by staff, and they are looking at that. So I mean, I think we can put that to rest.
Okay, so the motion has been moved and seconded. Yes, I'll just add my own comments. I will be supporting it. I too want to thank all of the delegations for having come in for a few meetings now, you and others, and being part of the process and engaging with us to make sure that the needs of the community were being looked after. It is a balancing act. Change is admittedly always difficult, and as much as we're trying to move forward in manners that look at a complete streets approach that addresses both cycling, pedestrian, and vehicular needs. While that change happens, it needs to be done in a way that brings the community along with it. And while this may not be the perfect solution in everyone's eyes, I think it's one that has brought a general degree of consensus amongst most. So thank you all for being part of that process. Did I hear a recorded vote has been requested? Yes? Okay. Recorded vote. All those in favor? And opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming in this evening. Next on the agenda list, I have Mr. Fat Nguyen. Mr. Nguyen is here simply to answer any questions, if Council has them, with respect to B4 on the Committee of the Whole agenda. I will also note that Mr. Chapman circulated Council with a revised motion late this afternoon as a result of a request that he received for a deferral on a couple of them. And so the new motion, and I'll read it out, is that the applications to City Council for cancellation, reduction, refund of taxes, excluding applications 87 and 88, totaling $127,341.40, as attached to the report, be approved pursuant to Section 357 of the Municipal Act, and further that consideration of applications 87 and 88, representing an increase in taxes of $4,736.10, be deferred to the October 5th Council meeting at the request of the property owner to allow for clarification of the basis of the adjustment with the property owner. So that's the revised motion that we're considering this evening. And as I indicated, there is a delegation here specifically in regards to their property, if we have any questions. Are there any questions? If not, somebody care to move it? Moved by Councillor Galloway-Seaglock, seconder, Councillor Fernandez. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Mr. Nguyen, it has been approved this evening. Okay, thank you very much, sir, for being here. Next, then we have Ms. Palmer Novakovic, who's here to answer any questions on the tenders. And we'll start with tender number 1, Consultant Services, South Kitchener District Park. Any questions? You'll move them? Okay, seconder, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Fernandez, questions?
Yes, well, I'm going to have a question on the first one. With regard to responses that I received from staff, there was quite a significant I have significant concerns about the difference in some of the prices that were shared with me. This is a very large project. I do believe when I look at the list of the prices that were where the money is coming from, and especially in light of what we heard from Mr. Tiegi regarding our infrastructure, some of this funding is coming from DC and some of it is coming from our federal residential federal tax. I really do think that I'd like to know why we are moving so quickly on a project that we are not going to be able to do shovels in the ground for quite a number of years.
Mr. Tyagi?
Through your worship, I believe that commitment was made that this project will be ready by the fall of 2018. So once the design work and the consulting services that the report you have in front of you, once that work has been completed, then we certainly will be moving towards the completion of the work.
But when we made that commitment or that discussion, and it wasn't unanimously supported at the budget time, we did not have the information that you brought forward to us regarding our infrastructure that you made a presentation to council. We are seeing, in your estimation and the presentation you made with Mr. Gross, some significant concerns around our water and our sewer mains. Why are we not using some of this funding then to address those? I realize that they come from different pots of money and some of them have specific definitions and allocations. But I do feel that we're sort of running down the road a little bit quickly, no pun intended, on a consulting project that maybe we should be using some of that money towards our infrastructure concerns.
Mr. Tyagi, if you can leave your microphone on, please. Go ahead.
My apology,
no worries.
Your worship. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the report that you have in front of you is based upon the direction that Council provided, and the staff is following up on the commitments that have been made in the past. And in future, going forward, obviously, if in future Council takes a different direction on different projects, then the staff will definitely follow up on those directions.
But this project is a $9.6 million project in the proposed budgets in 2016, 17, 18, and 19, right?
Phase 1 of the project is estimated at about 9.6 million, yes.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez, I'm giving you some latitude, but we need to focus. Okay. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. I have no questions about the merits of this project. I think this is something commitments already made from previous councils. My question is more about purchasing guidelines and our tender process. The consultant does have a considerable contingency included in. It's roughly around 10%. I see it quite high, simply because I think we're dealing with an item for some committee as well, where once the company that had accepted tender, they dug into the ground. There were some issues, and obviously then they had to come back to council for more monies. For something consulting services like this, for me as a layman, I don't see a lot of uncertainties or unknowns arising out of consulting report. Is this normal typically for consulting services?
Ms. Palmer-Novakovic.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we typically do see contingencies included in our consulting services. The rate can vary a little bit, but I think the 10% is fairly standard of what we've seen historically in our projects.
Is there an opportunity sometimes to push back on that, or does our purchasing guideline allow that process? Or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the contingency isn't set as part of the procurement parameters per se. The contingency is set in discussions with the internal business partner and procurement at the start of the project prior to releasing the bid document, and it's based on risk factors. So typically we stay around the 10%, but it is reviewed.
All right, thank you.
If I may, Your Worship, I just want to add to that one of the components will be for us to negotiate an upset limit for the price of the contract. And I think we'll be looking at some of those things that Council Singh has brought forward today as one of the considerations as to how much we negotiate, up to what point we say this is a fixed price.
Good. Thank you for the clear comments. Glad to hear it.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, am I able to ask if this was the lowest price of the requests that we got back?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this was not the lowest cost proposal. Proposals are evaluated on the evaluation criteria outlined within the document, and we are recommending award to the highest scoring proposal.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I knew that it wasn't the lowest price. But based on that, then what is the criteria that where we've overlooked price in this case? What was the criteria that led us to the direction that we're moving to with this particular consultant? What was it that they excelled in or were way above everyone else? I'm sure this is something that they don't mind us speaking in public about.
So,
Ms. Palmer Novakovic?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the list of the evaluation criteria is included on page 2 of the report. It doesn't outline the specific weightings that each of the proponents received. What occurs after the fact is we utilize the evaluation results and we debrief the unsuccessful proponents so that they know where they can improve for the next proposal submitted.
Can I ask you if the final tally, now you don't give us, you give us the list of the items, but you don't give us the tally on what each of the bids made. Isn't that information that would help us say, yes, we're overlooking price, which is a big factor in this case, but here's the reason.
Look, Councillor Gazzola, in fairness, I think with your years of experience both on council and as a staff person, this is not an unfamiliar format to you, and a similar process that happens on these types of RFP tenders. I want to make sure I'm using the right. Am I using the right term? Or EOI tenders that we deal with on a regular basis.
I'm sorry, what did you just tell me?
What I said was that this is not a process you should be unfamiliar with in light of your time on council, and so this is a policy that we have in place. I don't think I am unfamiliar with, and I'm asking, when we've overlooked the price issue, what are the criteria that jumped out that makes us awarded this project to this consultant? Mr. Chapman, I see you'd like to comment on this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to add to Ms. Palmer Novakovic's comments, we'd be pleased to share that information with Council by way of confidential email. As you know, our past practice has been to maintain all proposal details in confidence based on the duty of fairness that we owe to the bidders. I know that Ms. Palmer Novakovic will be reviewing our practices and bringing a report back to you at some future date on those types of questions, but for now, we'd be pleased to send you an email with that information.
Thank you. One other question with this project, and I'm trying to understand it to appreciate it. I thought that that project was considerably more than $10 million. What is the price of the total project?
Mr. Tagg.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the phase 1 of the project is estimated at 9.6 million.
I read that. What is the price?
Phase 2, I'm coming to that. Phase 2, which is not currently funded, is estimated at just over 6 million.
So the total project is $16 million?
That is correct. That's my understanding.
I'm really sorry because I had
Mr. May?
Much bigger figures in mind.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Tagi's right in terms of the outdoor components of the park. There are a number of other indoor components, such as the pool and the indoor turf facility. I believe that overall number is included in the district master plan, and so we can certainly email that to council.
We don't have that offhand. Okay, that's the reason I asked the question. I'm trying to ascertain what this $1 million consulting fee, what is it relating to then? So it doesn't relate to the pool and the arena and all of those other things?
That is correct. It's only for phase one of the...
Which is, can you be a little more specific on what it... I'm just wondering what we get for $1 million. What's it... What is it dealing with?
The scope of the phase one of the project is multi-purpose sport fields, park roadways, parking area grading, stormwater management, site servicing, washrooms, trails, and other park amenities.
Okay, so there's no big building. This is mainly for grounds and roads.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay, it seems like a lot of money for that, but that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Galway-Seelock.
Yeah. My first question is, when was this project first considered? A park in the southwest end?
Mr. May?
I believe the South Kitchener District Park Master Plan was approved by Council in November 2013, but the discussions may have gone back before that.
Okay, so I guess my question is when was it for this project first considered by the city?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my recollection was that it goes back to 1991 and has been included in the Leisure Master Plan, the Parks Master Plan, and the updated Leisure Facilities Master Plan.
Okay, thank you. And my second question would be, this tender is coming in under budget, and there is a surplus with regards to the specific portion of it. As we move along with it, do we have the ability for this tender to increase the scope of work if it's needed as things progress? As in add to the scope of work, add different components that they can address? I'm not suggesting we do it, I'm just saying, do we have that ability as we move forward?
We certainly could look into that. My personal preference is always, whenever possible, not to increase the scope of the work, because unless we feel that we can get good price from the consultant for the extra work, I would not want to go on that path, but certainly we can look into that.
We have the ability to, through our purchasing policies, to do that if it comes down to it at the end of the day.
I think within certain percentages, yes.
But it would come back to council and have to
Yes.
get all those approvals. I want to make sure, I'm not suggesting we do that, I'm just asking that question to see if we have the ability to do that.
Ms. Palmer-Novakovic, you wanted to add something or no?
I was just going to agree, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Galway-Seelock is correct that through mutual agreement of the project manager and the awarded vendor, a contract change order could be approved. If it was greater than 10%, it would come back to council for approval.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Galway-Seelock, you still have the floor.
Can I make just one quick comment?
Please do.
I just think, having sat around here for 9 years, I think it's time that we start moving forward with this project. It's been contemplated since 1991. This is the first step in starting to move this project forward according to the way it is set out in the capital forecast as we passed this past year. And so I'd like to continue to move forward with this project. It's much needed in the south end of Kitchener.
Okay. I'll come back because all the tenders have been moved as a group. Any questions on the tandem vibratory asphalt rollers? Councillor Gazzola.
No, I don't have. I have a question on the next one.
Okay, this is on the vendor or the desktop management services.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Gazzola.
Now, I'm curious as to what the benefits are to us for going to this supplier. I'm confused. I've heard figures bandied about as to what our average annual purchase is. But I'm trying to understand, what are our benefits to going and getting involved with such a big group? I guess my real question is, did anyone take what our average annual purchase is and compare to pricing from this conglomerate group to see how we would benefit? Can we show that there will be a benefit here, or is this just something that we're, joining on board?
Ms. Palmer Novakovic.
3, Mr. Mayor, there was significant review of current pricing for these type of devices against this vendor of record agreement, and the price savings are considerable due to the amount of volume within the provincial vendor of record agreement.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and that's good to hear. Now, can you just give us some kind of inkling? Will we be saving 2%, 5%, or 20% of what we're spending? I think that'll be important when we sit down to strike a new budget. So it'd be nice to know that.
Ms. Palmer Novakovic.
3, Mr. Mayor, the unit pricing is favorable in the VOR agreement versus the current agreement. I believe the information that was shared with Council does talk about the increase in mobile devices that will be utilized as part of the mobile strategy. So while I can, from a procurement point of view, talk to you of the unit price savings offline, I believe it would be I'm not sure that we can say overall there would be savings.
Wait a minute. Did I just hear you say that you don't think there will be overall savings? Is that what I heard?
Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the unit costs are lower, but we expect over time to deploy more mobile devices. I think as Council is aware, we have many field workers that right now follow somewhat inefficient processes where they have to return to the office for data entry to retrieve maps, retrieve work orders, that sort of thing. And over time, we expect to deploy more technology in vehicles for field workers. So their efficiency will increase, but there will be a greater cost to deploy more technology. But back to your original question, Councillor Gillow, yes, we have compared unit prices, and this is more economical for the city.
Do you have any indication? Just looking at the short run, can we look at saving 10% next year? Or can we look at making up for whatever inflation rate increase there is?
IT staff undertook that detailed review. I don't have that, but I can send something to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez on this one?
Yes. Just listening to the discussion and questions from Councillor Gazzola, the information I had received was that the $186.
$186,000?
$186,000, sorry, I was just going to add the other part, $261, was related only to the mobile hardware. The average spend was $261,614. Of that portion was the mobile hardware. Should we not see a reduction in our spend in our desktop computers and all the paraphernalia that goes with that, monitors, keyboards, etc., if we're going to be adding more mobile devices?
Through the Mayor, to the extent that a mobile device replaces a desktop device, yes, that would be correct. But as I've noted, in many cases we will be issuing a mobile device to employees that to this point have not used computer technology.
So we're going to be adding mobile devices to staff who don't have mobile devices at all right now?
Or desktop computers, yes.
Okay.
And when Mr. Murray comes back to the strategic session on the technology strategy, there will be more information about mobile technology and I think some good case studies in terms of where the costs of deploying mobile technology are far exceeded by the efficiency benefit of deploying that technology in the field.
And that's a very good point, Mr. Chapman. I think that what would be really important for us to understand is where we will see the savings, whether it's in time or mileage or the use of fleet, because staff is going from on-site, going back to the COF or coming back to the city to City Hall to input all of that data. If they can do it in the field, then we need to understand exactly how that's going to help us be more efficient and be more effective. Is that a reasonable request then?
Yes, that's our intent.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor David, yours is a comment. Okay, I'll come back to you. Councillor Gazzola, question on this still? Okay, so the next one is the Battler Yards. Councillor Gazzola.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Battler Yards?
Oh, yes. I'm just concerned with, this is a substantial amount of dollars that we're getting involved with. How long has this been going on, that we've been collecting that dirt and then moving it? Is this? I don't remember as this always being the case.
Mr. Tyagi.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I think when we talk about dirt, there are different type of dirts, if you may, and this is a different kind of dirt. This is the first time that we are handling the material excavated from the storm water ponds, which is quite different than what we get from under the roads when we do the repair work or construction work on the roadways. And the reason this is different is because the composition of this is quite different in terms of the contaminants that you will find typically in a stormwater pond. We own about, I think, 107 ponds, and this is the first time that we have cleaned up 9 of those ponds. And this is not the first time you're going to see this kind of report, because, as I said, this is the first time we're doing it. In future, you'll see more reports of this nature where we have to maintain these ponds.
Okay, that answers. So this is it's a new thing, and I guess my concern is there no other way of disposing of this dirt? I like in the past, I know there have been occasions where we've needed fill to build up. I know a few years ago, Chicopee was looking all over the place for fill to build up one of their hills and things like that. Are there situations like that around where this dirt can be used and can be disposed of for less than $300,000-$400,000 a year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do share completely the concerns expressed by Councillor Gazzola. It is a large amount of money, and when I saw the report first, I had a similar reaction. And our staff has been working with the Minister of Environment, trying to find out if there are better and cheaper ways of disposing this material. The difficulty we have is, as I said earlier, this material is quite different from what you find under the roads, and it's contaminated, so it does cost quite a bit more money to dispose it, because you can't simply landfill this material.
Yeah, okay, and I'm sorry to prolong this, but I don't quite understand. I mean, this is coming from stormwater sites that we have, ponds around the city, and if you're tending to indicate that these ponds around the city are contaminated, or what?
Well, there are 3 major contaminants, if you may, you'll find typically in the stormwater management ponds. There are sediments. One will be road salt, obviously, because the water coming from the roadways, it will have a higher concentration of salt. It also contains oil. And the third major component will be arsenic, which is a byproduct of salting operations. So those are the 3 major contaminants. There are other contaminants, and the bottom line is, before we can dispose of any material, it has to be tested, which was done in this case. We sent the material, we retained a consultant. They did the testing, and the report came out that this material is not suitable for general filling purpose.
Okay, my final question, would it have been possible to store more of this at the Battler Yards without having to take this step at this time, in the hopes that perhaps down the road there are other avenues to deal with this? Do we have the space that we could pile up for a couple of years?
We did look at that option, and there are two fundamental problems with that. One is if we saw that there could be a solution in the short term where there could be a more economical way of disposing this material, then I'll be the first one to say, let's store the material. The difficulty we have is, as I said, these are the first 9 of the 107 some ponds. And once they reach certain level of sediments, they stop working, both in terms of the control of the water quantity, but also in terms of control of the water quality that comes out of the ponds. So I really don't see that option at this particular point in time. In future, as I said, we are looking at different options.
Councillor Yanetsky?
Yes, thank you. Further to Councillor Gazzola's questioning on this, you mentioned that this request for this particular recommendation, this is the first time we're doing this in terms of having an outsider address this contamination matters. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Help me understand how this is the first time, and we have 107 stormwater management ponds, and we've had stormwater management ponds for some 35 years. What have we done for the past 35 years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Council is correct. I think the earlier ponds, I believe, were built in the 70s, and some of them perhaps should have been cleaned. The one thing Council needs to understand is that in the 70s, the regulations with respect to the stormwater management ponds were quite different than what they are today. Since the Source Water Protection Act came into fact, I think regulations have changed, and now under the Ontario Water Resources Act, municipalities are required to maintain these ponds on a regular basis, whereas before that, the requirements were not that stringent.
So I know you have to comply with the new regulations, but you cleaned out stormwater management ponds for 35 years. You brought the dirt or the residue back to Battler and just let it dry out and then disposed of it? Is that what you did in the past because the rules were different?
Well, I can't really answer as to why we did not clean these ponds in the 70s and 80s. I really don't have an answer to that question. I think the only thing I can guess is that the regulations weren't there as stringent as they are today in terms of requiring us to clean the ponds. If you don't clean the ponds, obviously they become less effective because if the pond is full, when the rain event happens, there will be more runoff coming out of the ponds because ponds don't have capacity to store the water, and also the quality of the water will be poor. So those things probably happened in the past. I'm guessing. I have no evidence to prove either way, but I'm guessing that if ponds weren't cleaned, the requirements were not to clean them, and most municipalities didn't.
Mr. Wilmer, you wanted to add something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reality of the situation is stormwater quality control ponds were a new thing in the 90s. And in the first few years, we didn't need to maintain them. But after 10 or 15 years, we realized we don't have a program of maintaining these. And then we came to council to say, we have a problem here. We need to maintain our stormwater quality control ponds. This is going to cost more money. And the way to finance that was through the stormwater utility. So it shouldn't be news to council that the reason we created the stormwater utility was to assess a fair and equitable way for property owners to pay for stormwater management. That enabled us to start maintaining quality control ponds. So yes, it's a new level of service. We weren't doing it for the last 25 years.
Councillor Fernandez?
Yep. My question is related to the fact that in the report it states that our staff, our operations and maintenance staff, did the work of cleaning out the 9 ponds. In the response when I asked Mr. Gross about it, he said that it was more effective for disposing the material through a private contractor. My question is if our staff did the removal, then they did it in the winter, so it would have been heavier and it would have been more arduous task, The material is now drier and easier to transport. Why are we not doing the work, which is essentially the same kind of work, transporting 5,200 tons from the stormwater management ponds to Battler Yards? Now they only have to move it from Battler Yards to the licensed facility that they can dispose of it. Why are we not having staff do exactly the same work, actually less work, than when they were removing it from the ponds?
So basically the operations is broken down to two parts, as Council you indicated. First is to remove the material, take it to a site, let it dry out, and then do the testing, and then dispose the material. So that's basically the operation. In future, I have asked the staff to look at are there ways of doing everything in one step. The difficulty will be if you dispose of wet material, the weight will be more, and it may cost us more. But that may be offset because of the cost involved in phase one. Because internally we spent just under about, I think the estimate was about 200,000 in terms of removing the material. So if you add the total cost, it's substantial cost. So I realize that. And we will be looking at different way of doing it, as I said, both from the point of view of working with the MOE, see if there is another way of disposing the material, but also in terms of material handling, and see if we can do it in one step. To answer your question at this point in time, it's going to cost us more if we were to transport the material from the location where it is to a site where somebody else will be treating the material and then disposing it.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused. We're transporting, I thought the material was already handled at Battler and dried and tested at Battler.
And the testing revealed that we cannot take the material
Right.
for
I understand that.
filling. So somebody has to take the material
Right.
and treat the material before they can dispose the material.
I think what Mr. Tyagi is trying to say, Councillor Fernandez, is when we remove the material from the stormwater management ponds, we don't know what the makeup of that material is.
Correct.
Once it gets to Battler Yards, it dries out, and we have an opportunity to test it. If it's found to have certain types of contaminants, then we need to get someone who is appropriately licensed, designated, and so on to move those materials. If the material isn't contaminated or whatever, then presumably we can move that on our own. Is that correct, Mr. Tyagi?
You're correct, Your Worship. The issue will still be where we take this material to. If there is a use for the material, we can take it to that use. If not, then we still have to find a disposal site.
I guess the confusion or the frustration for me is we already did the work. The stuff was already contaminated at the time. We let it dry, and now we're paying, and we had it tested by CH2M. We know what it contains. We have the equipment and the personnel to move it because they moved it the first time. Why are we not allowed? And you've given me the answer, so I'm not going to belabor the question. That's all I have on that, but I would like to request that each tender be voted on separately and a recorded vote on all of them.
Okay, Mr. Wilmer.
Through the Mayor, I would just like to say this is what stormwater management is about. These contaminants are not going into our streams and rivers. They're being caught in the ponds, and we are intercepting them and disposing of them safely. This is why we do stormwater management.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmer, and I will just point out that the response that Mr. Tyagi has given is that when we don't know that those contaminants are there, i.e. when we pull it out of the stormwater management pond, when we don't know the makeup of them, there's one set of rules that apply. Once we actually know what those contaminants are, there's a different set of rules that apply, and we have to follow those rules as identified by the other orders of government. That's the reality of it. Councillor Fernandez?
I just want to respond to Mr. Wilmer. I am not challenging the stormwater pond issue or the stormwater credit fee or any of that. All I'm asking is why, if we removed it the first time, why we can't transport it with our own staff and our own vehicles a second time. That's all I'm challenging. I just want you to understand that.
Whoops, sorry. Thank you, and I think Mr. Wilmer was simply trying to provide some clarity for council. So it's been requested that we deal with each of these separately and as a recorded vote. Councillor Davey, you asked to make some comments.
Yeah, actually, and again, I hate to do this because the comment's somewhat outside of the tender process, but I just want to speak with respect to the desktop and the mobile technology tender. There were some questions on that, and I guess you can expect me to comment on it going forward. We dealt with this in the past, and that's why the tender's here now. But the reality is we either increase productivity per worker or we hire more workers, we add more staff. You may not necessarily see savings per se when this comes back, but what it may do is it may prevent us from having to add more staff in the future, because a single staff member will be able to do more work, because as Mr. Chapman pointed out, they won't have to come back to the office to pick up a photograph or a map or some piece of information that they didn't have otherwise. So I'm not sure if there's necessarily any concern about this when the questions were brought up, but I just want to really point out the fact that we either start investing in making the number of staff that we have do more work, or we're going to end up paying for it probably more so in terms of the number of staff that we have to add.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
I mean, that's another whole issue. Okay, that's not, it has nothing to
What's
do
your
with,
point of order,
with the
Councillor
tender.
Gazzola?
Pardon?
What's your point of order?
Well, I just want to respond to that.
Well, okay, then you can make your comments if you want to make comments. That's not a point of order, though.
Well, whatever it is, my comment, those comments have nothing to do with, and I asked a number of questions. Have nothing to do, and I deal with everything in the fact that if we're going to spend additional amounts of money, there should be savings involved. There was nothing in the report that stated by jumping to this conglomerate where there were going to be any savings. And I tried to zero in on some additional details as to why we're going in a certain direction. Yes, if we use more technology, there should be less staff. And I hope when that time comes that we see that. Normally what we see around here is more technology, more staff.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. I think Councillor Davies' point was that it doesn't necessarily mean less staff, but it may mean avoidance of additional staff in the future. So with that, a recorded vote has been called. First, we'll deal with the South Kitchener District Park. All those in favor? All those opposed? That is carried. Now the asphalt rollers. That's carried unanimously. Now the provincial tender on desktop management. Services and products. And that too was carried unanimously. And finally, the Battler Yard. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you, Ms. Palmer-Novakovic. That would be it for our delegations. And we will now go to Community and Infrastructures Committee. Councillor Ioannidis.
It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Frank Etherington that the report of the Community Infrastructure Service Committee be adopted through items through 1 to 5.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
I'd just like to have number 2 pulled out separately and voted on independently. Sorry, recorded vote.
A recorded vote on number 2, the Roland Street Bridge replacement?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll deal with number 2 first. All those in favor? Actually, if everyone can recorded vote, sorry. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And the balance of the report, and that's just standard vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Planning and Strategic Initiatives. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Galloway Seelock. The reports outlined under Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee be adopted.
Okay, any questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Heritage Kitchener, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you. 2 items in this regard, both under Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act, one pertaining to 466 Queen Street South, and the other one 300 Joseph Scherg Crescent, dealing with the heritage permit applications. I so move.
Okay, moved and do I have a seconder? Councillor Fernandez. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That too is carried. Unfinished business. We've dealt with that item of unfinished business. Moving on to new business. Item number 1. Just a brief update for members of council from FCM meetings last week. There is obviously a lot of focus going on right now in regards to the federal election and making sure that issues that are important to cities and communities are at the forefront with all of the parties. For council's benefit, if you haven't looked at the FCM website, I encourage you to do so. There's an excellent tool there to engage elected officials with candidates in their ridings around the issues. There's 5 focuses from an FCM overall perspective: local jobs, local growth, livable hometowns, environmentally sustainable cities and communities, global municipal connections, and safe cities and communities. And then from a big city mayor's caucus perspective, the focus is on infrastructure investment, transit investment, and affordable housing going forward. There are a number of initiatives that FCM is going to continue with over the next, I think 45, 50 days that are left in the campaign. Another part that's quite interesting on the website, and I know those in the viewing audience this evening may want to take a look at, is the policy tracker on those issues and where each of the political parties stand on the issues. Locally, actually, this Friday, we've arranged for all of the candidates from the 4 major parties to come in for a meeting, separate meetings, to be briefed on the FCM platform and issues that are important to Canadian municipalities. We'll be issuing a survey to all local candidates. And as well, there's a number of BC MC initiatives that are going to take place over the next little while. The other issue that gained a lot of attention, which shouldn't come as a surprise, one that we're dealing with next here in our own council as well, it's the issue pertaining to the Syrian refugee crisis. And FCM has dealt with that issue both as a BCMC caucus and as a board. It really started with some of the work that Mayors Tory from Toronto, Watson from Ottawa, and Robertson from Vancouver raised and brought forward. And FCM passed an emergency motion on the weekend that essentially calls on the federal government to take more significant action with respect to the refugee crisis, and also establishes a task force on refugee resettlement. So that has been happening at an FCM level, and they've been dialoguing both with the federal government, particularly with Canadian Immigration, around the issue of sponsorships of refugees, as well as with other local government associations globally. Locally, we know that yesterday was the Embrace Syria event, and Councillor Marsh was there as well as myself up in Waterloo. We know that in a moment we'll be dealing with a motion that Councillor Fernandez has brought forward. Regional Council is dealing with a motion tomorrow as well, and tomorrow afternoon a number of organizations, including Mennonite Central Committee and others, are organizing a rally that'll be here at 5:30 p.m. And in the days and weeks ahead, I'll be working with the other mayors to organize a coordination meeting with community agencies and others, so that if the federal government is to open the doors to additional refugees and we see them arriving in our community, we'll be well positioned to respond to them. So that would be my report from that, and I would now turn it over to you, Councillor Fernandez, for bringing a motion forward for something that we can do as a municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you like me to, bless you, would you like me to read the motion?
Maybe we can just focus on the operative phrase.
Okay. So,
the last three paragraphs.
Yep. Therefore, it be resolved that the Government of Canada be urged to increase the number of refugees being admitted into this country and expedite the process for people seeking to sponsor these refugees' entrance into Canada. Be it further resolved that $5,000 be donated to the Mennonite Central Committee's SOS for Syria campaign to assist children and families who are displaced by violence in Syria's civil war. And be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be circulated to the leaders of the four major federal political parties, the Minister of Immigration and Citizenship, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and local area MPs.
Okay, thank you.
I can speak to that once there's
sure,
questions.
is there a seconder for that? Councillor Singh, go ahead.
Okay. You know, we've all been inundated with visuals and media about what's happening in Syria, but I don't want to just focus on that, although that's what my motion is. There are refugees in probably a dozen or half a dozen more places. As a municipality, when these refugees come to us, it will be our responsibility to help them integrate into our city, into our schools, and into our community. And I think that this is really just scratching the surface of what will need to be done, and we need to look at a broader vision of how we deal with refugees and how we deal with people who are displaced by civil war and by the challenges that we see in so many countries. It's my sincere hope that Council supports this unanimously tonight, and I think that there is more that we can do. And I'm thrilled to see the number of agencies that are stepping up and private individuals who are stepping up to try and sponsor families to bring them here to Canada. Thank you.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree completely with the intent of this motion, but I would point out that the proposed $5,000 represents a donation of roughly about 2 cents for every Kitchener taxpayer. Now, I'm convinced the average taxpayer in a charitable concerned municipality cares a great deal more than might be reflected by 2-cent donations aimed at helping to ease this growing international tragedy. And for that reason, I would like to amend Councillor Fernandez's motion by doubling the proposed city donation to $10,000.
Okay. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Second by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Okay, I'll deal with the amendment separately when the time comes. Councillor Singh.
Thank you. I'll briefly speak to both the motion and the amendment as well. Mr. Mayor, I think Canada has always been a leader in responding to human tragedy, all over the world, in extending a helping hand and doing what it can. And I think this is that moment where Canada should and must do more than what is being done now. I think we have the capacity from all of us individually and collectively and as a nation to be there in this very sad circumstances and in face of tremendous human tragedy. So I welcome the motion, and I think this is great, and sending a message to our federal government that more must be done, as well as I think we have to do that with leading by example, and as a community, as a municipality, if we can do more, we should. And that's why I thought 5,000 was a step in the right direction, but I welcome the amendment, and I will support the 10,000 amendment as well.
Councillor Onetsky.
Yes, thank you. It's interesting that we have an issue that is a world issue, and we're basically municipal government. And I've always questioned over the years here why we're dealing with issues that are really not pertaining to municipal politics. However, in this case, we do have a tragedy there, and I am very sympathetic to the cause that is happening. However, as Councillor Fernandez pointed out, the impact of this particular scenario will impact Kitchener in the long run. Yes, we are encouraging refugees to numbers be increased and brought them to Canada, and of course they'll be dispersed somewhere across Canada, and probably some of them will even come to Kitchener. And the impact on Kitchener basically comes that even though the government provides the transportation, gets them across and does whatever it has to, but once they come here, we still got to get them into our culture. We've got to get them into the schools. We've got to get them into housing. We've got to get them into provisions of living in our society. And that's the challenge that we eventually have to do, both as municipal government as well as regional government. So I'm prepared to support this, even though I think it's an issue that really is federally, that should be addressed, and people have been addressing that through the media and stepping up. But the impact will still come to different cities as well as Kitchener. So I'm still prepared to support this.
Councillor Marsh.
I also am very much in support of this motion. I want to just add, pardon me, I'll try my best. I want to just add that it's true that it is not a municipal issue directly, but perhaps we can respond in addition to this motion tonight, but perhaps we can consider in future meetings how we might respond appropriately as a municipality. For example, if we can forward our efforts to increase the number of affordable housing units in our municipality, perhaps we can set aside some of those as individuals in our community sponsor refugees to come. That could facilitate a place for those refugees to come and stay as they get on their feet. So I think that through conversations that the mayor has had already with other mayors and future conversations, that we can come to some appropriate ways that that our municipality can welcome Syrian refugees and other refugees from other parts of the world that are also in crisis. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, I'll just make a couple briefly. I have been astonished by the response that has come from from our community over the past couple weeks on this issue. I know since mayors have come out and spoken about it, I've heard from many people, both individuals and organizations, who are looking for us as a community to and as individuals to step up and do what we can to help during what, quite frankly, has become probably the largest refugee crisis facing the planet since World War II. And it's a significant issue. It's affecting municipalities throughout the region and throughout Europe in a big way. I mean, if you just think of if you want to talk about how it relates to a municipality, just reach out and try connecting with the mayor of Munich and ask him what having 10,000 plus people show up in your community over a weekend means, to understand what the impact is on local government. And that's a reality that they're dealing with in many municipalities in Europe. And I think Canadians have been saying that we have a long and proud history, and this community in particular has a long and proud history of opening its doors to refugees during a time of need, and we're well positioned to do that again this time. I too will be supporting the amended motion that's been brought forward. I know generally our amount during global crises have been about 5,000, but I do remember one other one where we, if I recall correctly, where we increased that amount. And I think in this instance, I can certainly support that. So we will deal with the amendment first and then go into the main motion. Councillor Davey.
No comment. Everyone else has said it quite eloquently. I just have a quick question on the funding source. Do we have an established funding source for these sorts of?
I think it comes, I'll turn to Mr. Chapman, but I think usually it comes out of a general pot and you just go over budget, but help me.
That's correct. Through the mayor, it will simply represent an over-expenditure for the year.
Okay. Thank you.
So we'll deal with the amendment first. So that's Councillor Etherington's amendment for recorded vote. Okay. And that's been carried. And now, sorry, yes, those in favor? And opposed? Okay, and now we'll deal with the motion as amended. Councillor Marsh?
Sorry, just a follow-up question regarding the source of funding. Okay, so currently, are we not in a financial position to be able to support an additional $10,000 from our current expenditures? Are we expecting that we will be in deficit by $10,000 at the end of the year, or not?
Mr. Chapman.
Through the chair, based on we're updating variance statements as we speak. Based on the last set of variance statements, I believe there was a net small surplus position. And so at this point, this would not have a negative impact on that position, but you'll see updated financials within the next month.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll have a recorded vote now on the motion as amended. So for $10,000. And that's carried unanimously. Okay, any questions and answers? Councillor Gazzola.
In view of just reading the paper the last week or so, where the principals behind Big Music Fest seem to be owing money, or are alleged to owe money, I'd like to know whether that organization owes the city any money for what transpired.
Okay, Mr. Wilmer?
Through the mayor, we can follow up with council after the fact.
Okay, thank you. No. Sorry? Well, I think staff will say they'll get the information to you. Okay, moving on, and apologies, I did forget one other item under the regional council update. I will be circulating to regional council to city council a report that's going to regional council tomorrow, and it's the regional council report from KPMG about items that potentially the region can be looking at in terms of alternate forms of service delivery. Two that directly affect the city potentially, or the cities, depending on where the region goes with them. One is in the provision of IT services, and the other is in the provision of operations. So I'll be sending you a copy of that report, so you have it for information. And staff will obviously be dialoguing with regional staff, and as appropriate, bring items forward to us if it's something that will need our involvement and input in. So with that, we'll now go to first reading of the bylaws, and it's been moved by Councillor Marsh, seconded by Councillor Yanetsky, that leave be given the mover and seconder to introduce the bylaws listed on the agenda, and that the same be taken as read a first time and stand referred to the Committee of the Whole. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Gazzola, if you can turn your mic on. It's been moved by Councillor Gazzola that Council resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried.
Ask someone to move second reading of the bylaws. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to the agenda. Item 1, the tenders have been dealt with. First variance has been dealt with. There's a second one dealing with 311 Frederick Street. Is someone prepared to move it? Councillor Fernandez, are there any questions on that? Councillor Marsh?
Councillor Marsh, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question of staff regarding the second part of the recommendation, that the request by the property owner to have the sign be 10 centimeters further closer to the street was refused. I'm wondering if staff can provide any insight as to the reaction of the property owner and whether or not they were amenable to that change.
Councillor Gazzola, I think Mr. May is looking to respond to this.
So through you, Councillor Gazzola, my understanding is that the property owner understood the decision of the Committee of Adjustment and has been working very cooperatively with staff on it, but certainly had appeared before the committee to argue against the recommendation.
And is there an existing sign now, or is it about a future sign?
My recollection is a new future sign, and staff's concern was the impact it would have on signs. Those properties are relatively small in width, and so it does have a visibility impediment to other signs in the area.
And it's on a corner lot as well,
Yes,
is it not? So
that's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Item number 3, anyone prepared to move? Item number 3, moved by Councillor Fernandez. Any questions on item number 3? Dealing with a dangerous dog designation appeal. No questions. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moving on now, item 4 was dealt with totally. Item number 5, an encroachment agreement with 44 to 54 Queen Street South. Anyone prepared to move that?
Councillor Ryan.
Councillor Ioannidis, any questions? Yes, I have a question. normally when we get into encroachment agreements, is there not some kind of a payment, a rental payment or something to the city for allowing them to encroach?
Ms. McDonald will respond to you, Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, in response to your inquiry, I can tell you in this case an application fee was paid of $264, and we, under our encroachment policy, do not charge a fee where the encroachment is on road allowance. There are fees with respect to encroachments on parkland and city land, but not as it relates to road allowances.
Okay. I also noticed in the report that they have signs out on the sidewalk. Is that allowable, or do they need permission to do that? Or?
Just inquiring, when you mean signs on the sidewalk, such as small little A-frame signs on the sidewalk, those are permitted under our sign bylaw with certain criteria to those.
Do people have to apply to do that? Or?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Councillor Yunetsky has a question.
Yeah, and a question to staff. On the sign, it protrudes into the road allowance by roughly 2 feet. I understand our sign policy bylaw basically is that we don't have any protrusion of signs coming outward from the building, but basically are along the face of the building. Have we changed the policy? I mean, we're only talking 2 feet, but that's may set a precedent.
Turn yourself back on, please.
I believe the bylaw may have been changed because we do have some projecting signs now that protrude into the road allowance. I just haven't looked at the provision more recently, but I do know we have some in the community already. And this is circulated to the planning department, so I assume if there was any issue, they would have notified staff.
Yeah, and they didn't address it as an issue, so that's what just puzzled, so thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Madam Clerk, any other items are?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, there is one late add-on item from caucus that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary settlement documents satisfactory to the city solicitor regarding the McLennan Park Comfort Station in accordance with the direction received in camera this day, September 14th, 2015.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Are there any questions, comments? Is it possible for our city solicitor just to give a generic explanation of what we're doing here? Is that possible or not? Public are watching. We're moving something.
I think the only thing I'd be prepared to say is that this was a discussion between the city and an entity that was doing work for the city of Kitchener. We've had settlement discussions. Those are usually done in a confidential arrangement, and that this document is actually setting out what we've agreed to, and it's done again on a confidential arrangement.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed?
Move that the committee rise and report.
I was going to ask if there are any other items, but I guess there aren't.
You got to do an all in favor.
Okay, it has been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Marsh that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Marsh, seconded by Councillor Yunetsky, that the bylaws listed on the agenda for third reading be taken as read a third time and be finally passed and numbered serially by the clerk. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Schneider that we now adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.